Imagine invading enemy territory, and practically on your own, wanting to beat up everyone who's against you. That's simply Garp, the crew member. But Akiji isn't going to make things easy for him, huh? In a place where everything's destroyed, someone decided to punch a ship so hard, he ended up with sore hands, but kept going. Years later, in the same spot, two Marines arrive where the guy had been smashing the ships. And another Marine explains that, in reality, those are punching ships. Everyone's got their quirks. Since there were two ships, one belonged to Vice Admiral Garp, and the other to his former apprentice, who, in this case, is Akiji. Going back in time again, we see a young Garp smashing the ships, and Akiji, also young, training with him. Since he was his apprentice, the two of them punch the ships just like Street Fighter when they break cars. In that training, it was forbidden to use either devil fruit powers or hockey. And that explains why Garp is so strong, like a bull that's taken whey and creatine. Back to the present on the pirate island. A giant stood up, and apparently, he was just taking a nice nap. Now he's mad because someone woke him up, saying he's going to beat everyone there. He even has a crowd to watch the fight. But he picked the wrong person to challenge, since Garp welcomes him with a punch so powerful that even though he's a giant, the way he went flying was even bigger. From the impact of the punch he took, Garp managed to take him down with just one punch. It was like he's the One Piece version of Saitama. The giant's crowd, now with Garp coming for them, already have their pants dirty just from the man's presence. And to mock the pirates even more, Garp says that was just a warm-up. Blackbeard's jester enters the scene, and he arrives spitting fire at the Marines. But Garp, who's no fool, uses pirates lying on the ground as shields to protect himself from the flames. Now we've got some pirate barbecue, as Garp uses them like fireballs, throwing them back at the jester. Garp is just wiping out the entire island, beating up all the pirates, and he doesn't care about being outnumbered. He just keeps smiling because he's going to mop the floor with every one of them. But the beautiful party crasher calls him at that exact moment, saying the hostages have already been rescued, and telling Garp to get out of there quickly, since the rescue mission was completed. So Garp decides that the show is over, and he's ready to leave the pirate island. But of course the pirates there aren't going to let them leave so easily. But the real problem isn't even them. It's Akiji, who's just arrived on the battlefield. He says he can't let anyone escape. Helmeppo is already trembling in fear at the sight of Akiji. Garp asks Akiji if he's sure that he wants to face off in a good old one-on-one. Akiji doesn't reply, but his expression makes it clear that he's ready for a fight. But Garp says the priority now is for them to get out of there as quickly as possible. Koby notices that one hostage still hasn't been rescued, but when he goes to save her, the woman turns out to be a pirate, and it was all a trap to trick Koby. Suddenly, a sword comes flying at high speed, aiming straight for Koby's back. But Garp arrives just in time and pushes him out of the way. However, the sword ends up piercing Garp's body. That one must have hurt, huh, Garp? And it wasn't just the sword. Shiryu was holding it while invisible. But since he could see the sword, Garp grabs Shiryu by the face, lifts him up, and then slams him to the ground with all his strength. The hit was so hard that the man saw constellations in the sky. Garp pulls the sword out of his body, and it looks like he felt that one. But even so, he tells everyone to get to the ship quickly. And Koby feels like a piece of trash for being such a fool, thinking it's his fault. Garp now has a huge hole in his stomach, and it's not from hunger. Shiryu gets up, unable to believe how tough Garp is, since even after being stabbed, he's still standing strong. The other pirates rush toward Garp, but Akiji stops them from advancing, telling them to stay out of the way, because the fight with Garp is his. He charges forward, freezing anyone in his path, stating that even if Garp were completely tied up, they still wouldn't be able to take him down. With his ice powers, Akiji charges at Garp, while Garp charges his power into his fist, rushing toward Akiji as well. They stare each other down with deadly intent. And in that exact moment, we get a flashback to when Akiji asked to be Garp's apprentice. But at first, Garp didn't want to train him. Yet Akiji kept insisting anyway, even though Garp just said he wasn't going to train anyone, and told him to get lost. Then he went off to punch one of the ships. Since Garp refused to train Akiji, Akiji decided to train himself, imitating Garp's punches on the ship next to him. But after a few hits, Akiji already starts feeling the pain in his hand. So Garp says, "Don't use your haki to punch. Otherwise, you can't even call this training." But Akiji replies that he doesn't even know how to use haki. So Akiji goes back to beating up the poor ship. Days pass, and before he knows it, Garp ends up becoming Akiji's master, as Akiji continues to train diligently. And after a few more years, Akiji begins to question the justice of the Marines, while Garp is frustrated because his son has become a revolutionary. Sometime later, Garp approaches Akiji, complaining that not only has his son turned against him, but now his grandson wants to become a pirate. For someone who's a Marine, that's an enormous absurdity. And Akiji just says, "What does that have to do with me?" Then Garp invites him to grab some food. Akiji says he's busy, but does Garp care? No. Back to the present, where now on opposite sides, Akiji and Garp stare each other down, having brief flashes of what their past together was like. Then they hit each other with massively powerful punches, creating a huge explosion on the island, sending both of them flying in different directions. So Koby and his friends decide that they need to protect Garp, who is now lying down from the impact he had with Akiji. Hikari, who had been frozen, finally awakens and is already worried about Koby. The woman is in love like I've never seen before. But then the entire island starts shaking, and everyone is confused about why there's an earthquake happening. Then they realize that, in fact, the island itself is moving, forming into a Sandman, like the Spider-Man villain. But remember, it's Pizarro. He's angry because he wants to get famous by defeating Garp and the Marines all at once. He simply forms a giant hand, ready to deliver a massive slap to the ship, where the innocent people are. Koby starts to panic, but Garp says, "Calm down, justice always prevails." And in the next episode, we'll find out if Pizarro's hand will take out the Marine ship or not. Garp decides he's going to deliver one last blow to save everyone there. And with all this huge chaos happening, Koby ends up awakening a new power. And the next episode of One Piece will be the final lesson, the legacy of impact. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. See you later, crew. Thank you and goodbye.